Pet your cat and hide your rockets, because this week we're doing You Only Live Twice, starring Sean Connery, the fifth instalment of the James Bond franchise.
We have never done a James Bond film. And the reason I chose this one, Declan, is... yeah, I like the newer James Bond films. I do like them. But I really enjoy these far more when it has the witty quips and the British humour. And just re-watching it, a lot of shit that they got away with that you could never do today.
Yeah, you're not fucking about. Like, right from the first couple of scenes, you got James Bond getting off with some beautiful Chinese bird, and he starts saying, like, why do Chinese girls taste different? And, like, every Asian character is just the absolute stereotype. But it's interesting as well, because you see it the whole time. It's in this way where they're really spoon-feeding you basic things, and you could tell there must have been a lot of fascination with Japanese culture at the time, and this film was taking advantage of it a little bit. They probably said, like, fuck it, let's do a James Bond goes to Japan movie next, so we can just exploit the fact that people are really interested in this shit, you know. While he's getting some information, fuck it, let's get him go to a sumo wrestling fight, and he'll shag a bunch of different Asian girls and get bathed by a bunch of them at one point.
This is why I like this film. It's legit like one of the craziest James Bond films. This is taken directly from Ian Fleming's novel. I like the newer films, as I said, but what I find is, because Ian Fleming is no longer here, there's no source material to take it from. A lot of the actual plot is weak. Quantum of Solace, Spectre was terrible.
You're beating them with the worst film of recent time from James Bond franchise.
Yeah.
Or even, I'll give you superficially a brilliant film, the last one, No Time to Die. Superficially an excellent, well produced, well acted film. Directing wise, it had me on every beat that I was supposed to be feeling. Rami Malek, a cool looking villain, but again, it's all superficial, because when you really even peeked slightly below the surface, it was just the costume of a brilliant James Bond film. It really, there was nothing behind it, which again is an example of the fact that even when they're very well done, they're kind of just recycling shite.
Yeah, the thing is with James Bond, Declan, it is basically a British institution of a film now. Whatever comes out, people will be like, oh, well, that looks a bit shit, but it is James Bond, so I'll give it a go. You know what I mean?
And really a unique institution as well. You know, we live in the era of reboots. I remember the first time I heard back in the day that Andrew Garfield had been cast as Spider-Man and they were rebooting the whole franchise. And I was like, what? You can't do that. You got to give it like 3 decades. But this had been going on constantly in one of the most obvious and iconic characters in movie history. James Bond, you know, he gets rebooted every couple of years, and it's a standalone thing within cinema that you don't really see with anything else. Until, you know, later years where now it's commonplace. But it's also cool because, you know, this one family owns the rights, and there was always particular rules about who James Bond could be, who the actor could be that would play him, who would be the director. You know, sadly with this last film, it's the first time they've ever let a non-British film director direct a James Bond film. I don't know why they decided to stop doing it now. It's a shame to tarnish that record. Not that there's anything inherently wrong with it, but it's just kind of, there's something cool about the fact that the franchise had been uniquely British in so many ways.
But what about this? Christopher Nolan directs a James Bond film.
Yeah.
So that'd be amazing.
I'll tell you what's interesting as well, just before we get back into the film, is the fact that Tarantino has said that he would like to direct a James Bond film at some point.
That's not going to work though, because it's going to be like people's legs like flying off, getting chopped off.
Fuck it.
An R-rated one. That'd be quality, actually.
Mate, if they can make fucking Quantum of Solace, they can make that. Right?
Yeah. Back to the film. Let's go all the way back to the start. Now, I always like to talk about the opening sequence of James Bond films, because that in itself is an institution as well. Like
the prelude to the sexy, hallucinating dancing sequence.
100%. So you got
the credits roll over.
You got some classic ones, like the one where he's skiing, he comes off the cliff, and you're like, no, and then all of a sudden he opens a parachute and it's a Union Jack, and then it goes,
yeah.
So that was great. GoldenEye is an all-time classic. Going Down the Dam, that's a fantastic one.
Oh, fucking Sean Connery.
Yeah.
No, Sean Connery, Sean Bean.
Oh, Sean Bean, yeah. James for England. This one, basically he gets tricked by the prostitute or the person he's shagging. Then some guys come in with machine guns. He gets put into a bed where he can't escape into the wall.
Conveniently, yeah.
Yeah, they shoot him, open it, and he's dead, and you're like, oh, James Bond can't be dead, and it proceeds to him
But
get.
they're also a bit like, well, there's blood. Let's not check any evidence that he's dead.
But I do like, Declan, the way the dancing girls come in with the when the music comes in. I love that opening. Like, it's not an all-time classic James Bond theme tune either, but it works, you know.
I mean, but you're comparing that to the absolute pinnacle. Films that get their own song is kind of died out anyway, but James Bond as a franchise of those songs, you know, that is the absolute benchmark. And it's one of the great ones. But you also skipped right over the rockets getting gobbled up.
I did.
What a fucking cool opening. And it was interesting as well because I was getting Star Wars vibes nearly. You know how Star Wars, after the credit sequence, the rolling credits of telling you what the fuck's been happening, pan down and you'll see some sort of spaceship. It's always in space how it starts off. And that's what we get in this, where we start off and we see this American rockets just, you know, zipped up into space. It's knocking about. They're going to do whatever the fuck they're going to do. And then this giant rocket shows up and swallows them whole. And I was watching it like, holy shit. Because I've not seen this film before, unlike Phil. And the thing with James Bond is James Bond's so iconic that it's parodied to death. And this is one of those films where nearly every part of it that I was going to see, even though I haven't seen it before, I've actually seen about 12 times, either in The Simpsons Austin Powers, or even less obvious stuff. But that was one thing I'd never seen parodied, I'd never heard about. I didn't know what that was the main crux of this film. So straight away, I was kind of like blown away, like, holy fuck. I've never thought of that as a concept or seen that anything like that before in a film.
Yeah, to be fair, like, on touching on the special effects, 2023, Declan, for us, like, looking at it at new eyes, we're like, it's not the best, but I reckon it still holds up in its own respect. And at the time, that must have been incredible. Like,
honestly, looking at it, I defy you to really find what the problem with it is. There's nothing really like.
It's dated.
Yeah, but
It's
like
1969.
no, but there's no bit where I was looking at it where it looked really ropey, like really superimposed. You know, I can tell that's an old movie, but nothing about it looked wrong.
The bit that made me laugh, though, is when the astronaut gets chopped off his little line and he just floats off. It's like a little toy, like a little model.
I know, yeah.
The Russians and the Americans are in a space race. This mysterious figure that no one knows about is sending rockets up to kidnap their rockets, as you said. And then obviously both sides are blaming each other. Therefore, the tensions are rising, and ultimate goal is to start an all-out war between Russia and America.
The Soviet government denies all knowledge of this affair. The world knows we are a peace-loving people.
I hereby give notice that in 20 days' time, the United States intends to launch her next spaceship into orbit. My government has instructed me to inform you that any interference with this spaceship will be regarded as an act of war.
Which kind of feeds in 1969 to maybe like Cold War hysteria.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I actually thought they kind of left money at the table in terms of potential motive for the supervillain, where this supervillain, whatever you want to call him, supervillain entrepreneur, basically doing a freelance job where he'd been paid to cause nuclear war between the Soviets and the Americans. I thought maybe it was going to lead towards that this private company wanted to control the space race and be the first guys into space and eventually own the economy. And it started making me think about SpaceX and Amazon trying to do their version of things and, you know, how that might become a reality in the future. But anyway, it wasn't about that. I just love this idea because with James Bond films, you want the stakes to be as big as it gets. You want it to involve entire nation states, you want it to involve potential nuclear war, but also it has to be grounded to the fact that one guy can affect it without it becoming really silly or preposterous. And this was a great example of a way in which the stakes felt believable, but it also felt plausible that James Bond could infiltrate this giant evil volcano that we find later in the film and actually affect things.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, you can't delve into this with too much realism because you're like... So I have been guilty of that with James Bond before, but I realise it's for the audience, for the set piece. James Bond can't die. He's James fucking Bond. Like, I'll be sitting there as a viewer being like, oh, how can he just run and all the bullets hit into the wall and not hit him? Like, how's he, like, kidding? Like, he'll like, hide behind a rock and the guy will shoot and then he'll just jump out and go... And I'm like, come on, man.
Especially in this era, because Sean Connery does look like a bad motherfucker, to be fair. But in this era, you know, people hadn't discovered steroids yet, or like actors didn't go to the gym, so they had like dad bods and stuff, and they looked like shit. And it's like you said in the Austin Power thing, where he would fire back once and like 7 guys would fall down at the same time. But it's not that crazy in this, because he doesn't get into too many massive fights. And this was still the era when James Bond would be crafty and smart to get out of a lot of situations. There was a lot of Indiana Jones pulling out his gun rather than getting into the fight with the guy with the sword kind of moments. Yeah. And you have those kind of moments in this film, but, you know, straight off the bat, you have James Bond's fake little funeral, they bury him at sea, and then a submarine picks up his little body covering that he's in, and then he's got a mask and he's like, permission to board.
Like,
and then within 5 minutes he's flirting with Moneypenny and like,
oh yeah, she gives him an instant Japanese book, and then he turns around and goes, you forgot I majored in Asian languages at Cambridge, and then just shuts the door.
Equivalent of one of the Japanese characters he meets later being like, I majored in European language. I know all of them. Like, what do you mean Oriental language?
It's them playing off each other. But basically, James Bond gets sent to find this mysterious figure who's playing against him. And then, you know, it starts off in a sumo arena where he's wearing a full suit still. And the code word, apparently, the code word that MI6, the top secret organisation of the whole spy world, it was I love you.
That feels too common.
It's like, I love you. And then this Japanese woman next to her was like, we should go to the hotel.
I love you.
I have a car nearby.
Oh, where do you suggest we go?
I know a quiet hotel.
And?
Yeah, and you're still thinking, like, you can see on Sean Connery's face even, he's even sort of thinking, like, maybe I'm just going to fuck this chick. And supposed to be meeting someone here, but fuck it.
Oh, mate. And then, and then it goes off from here. Basically, he goes to meet Mr. Henderson.
I got the vibe that he was a spy. He was James Bond's main contact in the country, and he was, you know, he's been living there for years as a spy, so obviously he's going to have a lot of intel, and he'll be his main link-up. But he's also really bought into the Japanese culture. He's wearing a little sort of like kimono, and he's wearing a little dressing gown, and you know, he's opening the doors and shit, and he's eating on the floor with chopsticks. He's got a sexy little Japanese wife, and he's giving him the lowdown. He's saying, oh, you want to meet this guy? He's like the head of Secret Service and blah blah blah. And then I actually really like this directing moment where he just stops mid-sentence and has this weird look in his face, and James Bond runs over to him like, what's going on? And he's got a knife in his back because it's come through one of their little paper mache walls they have. And he's dead. And you're like, oh, fuck. So he starts running down the street, like chasing this guy, looking for him, beats him up, kills him, puts on his little ninja outfit, and then just gets into the car with his mate. And he just, I guess he's pretending he's hurt, because anytime his mate's like, yo, so what happened? Did you kill James Bond? He's just like, oh.
Yeah. He's like, say something, and then Sean Connery just speaks in a Scottish accent. He's like, you're not my mate.
He's just like holding his stomach going, oh. So I guess he does that for like the 30-minute car ride or whatever it takes to get back to the headquarters. And then James Bond sneaks into HQ. Because of the fact that Mr. Henderson was set up, you assume his secret agent helper, woman, Japanese lady, he met at a sumo wrestling place, is also dodgy. And James Bond is running after her at one point. This is the kind of James Bond film where it's the antithesis of the Daniel Craig era, which was a great era, and I get they wanted to go for like a Jason Bourne grounded period of Bond, because, you know, Pierce Brosnan stuff got a bit too wacky towards the end and people got sour on it. But for me, this is James Bond, where it's over the top, there's a crazy secret layer, and apparently even running down a normal public transport sidewalk underpass sort of area could be actually a trap door that's going to lead to the Secret Service of Japan's main headquarters and office.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck was that about?
I don't know why they just wouldn't like contact him, like.
But can you imagine constructing that?
Or you know, if he's getting sent out to fucking Japan to investigate this guy, how their secret services wouldn't be like, oh, I'm sending this guy. Can you just like meet him?
Yeah.
Not like fall through a trap.
But even like, what other time was that ever used for anything?
Maybe they just constructed it to capture him. I don't know.
Yeah, but why?
But to be fair, it legit makes no sense.
But this introduces us to one of my favourite characters in the whole who I can't remember his Japanese name, but his nickname's Tiger. And this guy is sick, man. He is an absolute fucking G.
It's another one why the film's funny. It's like he's going to meet his counterpart from the Japanese Secret Service. What names should we give him? Tiger. Tiger's Japanese. Like literally. And,
it's funny as well because Japan doesn't have tigers.
I know.
But for some reason they're associated with it. But anyway, so they're chatting. They become best mates. He's like, we think the guy that's running all this evil shit, nicking people's spaceships, is this Japanese businessman. So, all right, set up a meeting with him tomorrow. No problem. Anyway, may as well come back to my house tonight. So they head back to his, and he's like, let's have a bath. And you're thinking like, what's going on here? But then they go in, and there's like 6 beautiful Asian women, or not Asian, Japanese more specifically, ready to fucking bathe them.
In white bras and white pants. Yeah. And he legit says, this was the line that I burst out laughing. In Japan, men always come first. And I was like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Mate, I legit nearly started whacking off in the middle of the movie.
Oh, mate, it was mad. Like,
it was fucking awesome. And that's what I mean, where you can tell this was a way of, they were really trying to play on the fascination that must have been building in Japanese culture at the time, and playing into stereotypes
and James
that
Bond
didn't even
says
exist.
to Tiger, like it's like a verses, isn't it? Like James Bond says to Tiger, I know a few girls would do this in Britain, like, literally. But it was just so weird. Like,
oh, it's brilliant. And then he's like, now pick one that you want to have a private massage. And you're like, fucking hell. So he picks one who's hot.
Yeah.
They go off. But then Kiki, or whatever her name is, his little Japanese Girl Scout helper who's been, turned out she wasn't evil, shows up, tells the other chick to do one, and they fuck.
Yeah.
I feel like later James Bond films, Daniel Craig and Pierce Brosnan actually did have to work a bit, but they just threw women at him.
It's like that Family Guy skit. It's like, oh, you're more persistent than James Bond than a woman who doesn't want to have sex. Have sex with me? Yeah. No. Yes.
Yes. When she's just like, okay.
Okay, yeah. It's literally like that. Like, anyway, he's a player. We all knew that about Mr. James. So he goes in for the meeting with this corporation boss. He walks into this huge room and like sits in a oval spinny chair. Straight away you can tell that this guy's dodgy, man. He's literally got a nice suit, like white hair, white beard, sits down and like speaks to him, and then this is quite a cool effect that I did actually like this. He like presses a button on the desk that somehow through the wood manages to x-ray James Bond and show that he has 2 guns with it.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
And he's like, you should quit smoking, Mr. Bond.
Yeah, he's like, it's the smoking that will kill you. And then anyway, so the conversation doesn't really go anywhere because he's being guarded, and then James Bond goes, and then he says to the Japanese villain guy, says to his assistant, kill him. Like that. So he comes out into the car park. All of a sudden it cuts to 2 Japanese people in their car with a machine gun out. For some reason James Bond just doesn't notice the people screeching up to him with a machine gun. Then Kiki comes and saves the day. She goes, jump in. He jumps in. Much like every single James Bond, they fire the bullets, but they miss him, So he gets in, and then we see... It seems like, Declan, every James Bond film must have a car chase at some point. So this is You Only Live Twice version. It's not really much of a chase. They chase each other through the street. Kiki gets on the phone to Tiger and says, execute or whatever she says. Tiger sends a helicopter with a magnet on it, for fuck's sake, picks up the pursuing car, and they just dump it into the river.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Tiger actually rivals James Bond in this film for being a gangster.
Tiger's better.
So anyway, James Bond does some more investigating down by the docks. He's getting chased by some henchmen. He tells Kiki, because apparently that's her name now, we've given her. Mm-hmm. He's like, get out of here, run. And he gets captured. And he's on like a boat or something. And the evil secretary, sexy redhead chick from the other day is in there. And she basically tells all the henchmen to fuck off. Starts getting ready to torture James Bond. And then kind of starts giving the fuck me eyes to him.
Yeah.
He's thinking, how should I play this? And he's like, do you know what? I am a spy. I want to rob your boss. Come in house with me. And seems like she's going for it. They sneak off together.
They get in a helicopter.
Or is it? No, it's a plane.
A plane. I got confused. Like, they hated each other, then they loved each other, then they got in a plane, and then And then,
Fill in the details.
and then when they're in the plane, Redhead has some like flying goggles on and a flying hat, and just presses a button, and a desk comes over his arms.
Yeah, again, I want an engineer to go through this
desk
film
goes-
and explain like how impossible all these elaborate
desk-
double uses everything
The
has.
desk has the exact like width for his arms.
Yeah.
Like, it just slides.
What if he was a
over him.
bit fatter?
Yeah, it just slides over him, and then he's stuck.
And then she jumps out.
She jumps out and
And I was
leaves him.
thinking, why did you do all that?
It is literally like, Austin Powers. We're gonna feed you to the laser sharks, and he's like, why don't you just shoot him? Like, why don't you? Oh, that cracks me up. But yeah, she leaves James Bond to his certain death.
Yeah, but he manages to just at the last second steer the plane to a crash landing. They basically realise that the dickhead is hanging out in this general area around where this volcano is. They don't realise that he's actually inside the volcano. So they're rocking about. James Bond, he has to have a special gadgets or vehicle of some sort in every film. In this one, it's basically like a toy helicopter. They have a scene that preambles him showing off the helicopter, taking out some planes or shooting some rockets or whatever he does. And the guy looking at it is kind of like, ha ha ha, what are you doing with that? Let me lend you one of my military helicopters. And James Bond basically winks at the audience like, oh, watch what this can do in a minute. But I've got to be honest, I agree with the guy. That fucking helicopter was shitty.
So basically, the helicopter is iconic in like James Bond lore now. It's called Little Nelly, innit?
Right.
And the way they build it is some weird like montage scene where it's like Lego connecting together.
Do-do-do,
It's like
do-do-do.
bang, like Lego connecting together, and it's built. And you're right, Tiger's like, ha, is this a toy for children? And then like it's missile shooting from behind it. Like it is quite cool. I like it.
It's pretty good in action.
Do you know
but
what?
I was just looking at it like, that's lame.
Me being a nerd, I must reveal this, viewers and Declan.
Alright.
I used to collect, and I still have it. Corgi done like specialised James Bond cars.
Who's Corgi?
Like the makers of like toy cars. They done a James Bond collection. So they made all the vehicles from James Bond. And I have like, the submarine one from the one with Roger Moore. The Aston Martin from Goldfinger, which is my favourite. And Little Nelly. And I love Little Nelly. From like years ago when the films first come out, they would like literally like fire missiles out of them. And for that time it was cool. They just recreated them.
Mate, I used to paint those little Warhammer Lord of the
so did
Rings
I.
things.
Let's not talk about it.
I won't judge you for
But
anything.
what I like about Little Nelly is it's a bit of an underdog thing, and it fucked them up. They were like, oh, look how shit this yellow thing is, and then bang, missiles out behind, like exploding top machines.
Do you know what? Fair point. So anyway, so they realise that shit's going down there. They have a nice countdown to detonation type deal where so far the Americans have sent up one rocket, it's been nicked. The Russians have been sent up another rocket, it's been nicked. Rather than thinking, oh, maybe it is someone else, they just continue to blame each other. They know the Americans and the Russians are sending up one more rocket soon, in a couple of days' time. And if that one gets nicked, it could lead to all-out war. So you got the countdown, they're racing against time. And for some reason, they decide, hey, James Bond, all your skills where you seem to just walk through entire military bases, kill thousands of people, shag all their wives while you're doing it, do this every single time, you've never failed. You're not good enough to go into this volcano and take on this guy. You need 4 days of ninja training.
He gets to Tiger's camp, and then he just basically reveals, I have thousands of ninjas that have been hiding this whole time. And that would make sense because they are ninjas, of course.
Yeah.
To get into the volcano, which is like the height of technology, they've decided to dress him up as a Japanese man in a kimono with a black wig glued onto his head, and then train him to fight with sticks.
And for some reason, whatever they were planning for him to do, but they also involves waxing his pubes.
And his chest, yeah.
And his chest, but also his pubes, apparently. Here's the thing, though. Was he supposed to just look like a Japanese guy by the time they were done?
I really don't... I think
Because
he
other
was.
than his haircut, it didn't look like they'd done
I
anything.
think he was. His hair was terrible.
Yeah, but also, it's like, I've never seen a Japanese guy with hair like
He
that.
literally was like a white guy with a black wig.
Yeah. John Wayne looked more like Asian than Genghis Khan.
It's so racist.
Yeah, it was like, but they didn't even do anything really. Like,
I actually read about this. Like, it was this woke article where it's like, white only live twice is offensive. And it's like, they decided to make a white Scottish guy Japanese. And if you notice, in some of you see later on where he's like choosing his wife or something.
yeah.
Some of them are like white people. They didn't even bother to make him Japanese. And just with like loads and loads of makeup on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not clock that at
they
all.
they was white. Like.
Must be racist as well, because I didn't see shit.
But it was just like, what is the point? of
That's
this?
another thing.
Yeah.
As well, is like, okay, all of this is really unnecessary.
So unnecessary.
But he really doesn't need a wife. Because, like, bear in mind as well, evil cat guy, because he's been revealed as the real villain. I got I literally fist pumped when the first shot of his cat revealed. Before they even showed his face, I was
the
like,
way they built it up.
I was like, yes.
It's just his hand like stroking the cat. But because you haven't seen this, but you've seen Austin Powers,
Yeah.
you clocked it, didn't you?
I was nearly sad, like, I wish I'd seen this before Austin Powers.
Yeah.
But he knows James Bond's there now. So rather than sending everyone else out to kill him en masse, he's sending, like, an assassin every 2 days for some reason.
Mate.
Poisons Kiki. Kiki dies. And I assume that is the real reason why they decided to give him a wife for his Japanese identity. I think it basically, like, we need a hot Asian for him to keep fucking for the rest of the film.
But it's meant to be a ninja training camp.
Yeah.
And they found the ninja training.
Yeah, not only that.
It's so shit.
Not only that, but at one point, it's not, in fairness, the first guy that kills Kiki,
He was pretty good.
he sneaks in at night. The next guy, he's sparring with him in broad daylight, surrounded by hundreds of ninjas. And once James Bond kills them, they wander over and they're just like, who's this?
Yeah, so they're sparring with their sticks, and all of a sudden he gets a knife out from the stick, and then James Bond kills him. And they're like, why did you kill him? And he's like, he tried to kill me first. And I'm like, what the fuck?
It's also zero reaction from them.
Yeah.
If he did just kill
They're
one
like,
of their guys.
cool.
So anyway, so it gets to the point where they discover the volcano. They sneak in there. James Bond's doing his, I get captured by the big bad villain, but he doesn't kill me for like 3 hours for some reason, while we have the 2-hour countdown to when the spaceship's going to fire off. James Bond even discovers and lets out all the cosmonauts and astronauts that have been locked away this whole time.
Can I just backtrack to how they ever actually discover the evil lair?
Yeah.
They're literally there, like looking around, yeah. And then the Japanese woman goes, oh, that's a nice lake. And then James Bond goes, how deep do you think this lake is? And picks up a stone, throws it, and then realises it's metal.
But also looking at it, you're like,
Yeah, it's clearly not a lake.
that's clearly a drawing.
It's like, oh, wow, this must be underneath here, you know. But, oh, fucking hell.
It is ridiculous, but it's brilliant.
Anyway, they sneak down. And as you said, yeah, James Bond, for some reason, they're coming along and he just manages to sneak behind the pillar and not be seen. It's so dumb.
Yeah, he's
like-
doing the Pink Panther, like, twinkle toes.
Yeah.
So he gets captured, he's doing his thing, he gets his little gadget out with the cool cigarette where it burns and shoots one guy and basically does nothing.
We've been introduced to Blofeld fully now, by the way. What did you think of his reveal?
He's fucking
He
great,
just like
man.
turned round in his chair and he was like,
I was honestly like, once he did reveal the cat and I realised, oh shit, it's Blofeld,
Yeah.
he's in this film. I was like, why didn't I get more Blofeld to begin with?
Yeah.
And then every time he was on screen, I was like, more Blofeld. But do you know what? It was actually a masterstroke because the fact he's so barely in it.
makes it more.
Oh, it makes it way better.
Obviously, Blofeld's been played by other actors. He's been in the James Bond films a lot, but this is widely regarded as the best portrayal of it.
Yeah, even me not seeing him before in an actual film, I was like, that's the Blofeld. Yeah.
Blofeld is showing James Bond like the rocket launch or something on the TV, isn't it? And he goes, watch the TV, James. It will be the last thing you ever see. And then the way he gets the cigarettes is he goes, well, if I'm going to watch TV, can I smoke?
I know.
And they're like, yeah, give him his cigarettes.
And wouldn't you be like, what's the connection there?
And by the way, the only reason, because James Bond before has dressed up as an astronaut to try and get on the ship, which I didn't really get. Like, how are you going to stop it if you're in space?
Mate, James Bond knows how to fly everything.
Yeah, that's true. But basically, they catch him just as he's about to get on, and Blofeld goes, "Bring him to me." And then he goes, "The astronauts don't carry a case onto the ship." And it's like, what the fuck?
Well, nothing gets past Blofeld.
Anyway, so he gets the cigarette. You know that this one guy is going to get targeted because everyone else is wearing grey, and the one guy that gets shot is wearing red. So you know he's the senior henchman that's going to get shot by the cigarette. He's learnt like bear karate from his ninja training camp, so he does like some cool like judo hip throws.
Yeah, was this the start of the judo chop that James Bond would throw out? It's fucking great either way. So you get the classic Simpsons parody moment that I've seen before, where all the Japanese soldiers fly over in the harness things, and they zoom down into the volcano. They start fighting all the henchmen. It's an all-out battle. James Bond escapes. He's running through and shit's happening.
Mate, it's a mad set piece, man. Like everywhere you look, there's like fighting everywhere. Like people like are throwing grenades. Like literally people are somersaulting through the air. Like. So they blow the rocket up, and by this time James Bond is chasing Blofeld. Blofeld's got a bodyguard that is like 8 foot tall, and they start fighting, and Blofeld, we've seen earlier, has got a bridge that when he presses a pedal, the bridge collapses.
Yeah, because everything moves or changes.
But everyone seems to go on the bridge, even though they've seen people into the piranha pool. Anyway, so James Bond in judo throws this guy into the piranha and just turns around to the camera and goes, "Bon appetit."
Because we forgot, he's got fucking piranha lake.
Yeah, he's got piranha lake.
And he's already thrown the sexy secretary into it.
Sexy secretary's gone.
Only thing about that, great idea, really iconic. I want to see more. I want to at least see some arms coming out of the water. People just seem to disappear into it.
Anyway, Blofeld, corporate Japanese villain guy, he's been told to kill James Bond twice, and Blofeld's got the gun, and he's like, "This is the price of failure, Mr. Bond," and he shoots Japanese corporate guy straight in the chest, so he's dead.
That was like, holy shit as well.
Yeah, you've got. I suppose if you're a ruthless super villain, you got to just kill people off to stamp your authority.
Absolutely.
You know? Anyway, Bond is chasing Blofeld. Blofeld gets into a monorail circular thing, and he's got the gun to him, and he's fine. He says, "Time to die, Mr. Bond." Bang! Tiger with one of the throwing stars from the ninja camp.
Boom!
Into his arm. He drops the gun and zooms off. And then you're like, as the audience, hang on, he's still alive. And then we don't see him again, so it sets it up for the next film. So basically, the day has been saved, Declan. The supervillain's nowhere to be seen. The rocket launch has been stopped.
Nuclear wars averted.
Nuclear wars averted. And what does James Bond do? Decides to go out on a lifeboat and just shag someone as a celebration.
It's the perfect ending as well, because he's off on the life raft. You know, the volcano's blowing up. He makes some sort of wisecrack about, "Oh, let's enjoy our honeymoon." He starts shagging the Asian bird. And he's like, "No one will find us." And just at that second, they lift into the air because a British nuclear sub is just arrived on the scene. Don't know how they knew he was there. Maybe it was an accident.
I think he might have a tracker.
And Moneypenny's like getting all jealous on the inside.
And then she's like, "Get him, tell him to come down here and report." And Moneypenny's like, "I will." Like,
after he fucks Susie or whatever.
So the film ends there, and it just flashes up credits. You know, the famous James Bond will return on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
It's fucking brilliant.
I personally rate it as one of my top James Bond films. It's silly in all the right areas. It's got that old British charm. The plot's very good. The music, the opening sequence, you know, some of it is very, very far-fetched and stupid. Let's admit that. But this is James Bond. We're not here for a realistic, gritty thing. If we wanted that, we would have maybe done, you know, the Icarus Files with Michael Caine or Bourne Ultimatum, or, you know, we're here for that. We like those wisecracks. Definitely 100% my top 3 James Bond films of all time.
100%. The Daniel Craig grounded Jason Bourne era was brilliant. It was brilliant, and it was a breath of fresh air at the time. But when they relaunch it and reboot it for this new era, I want a return to the bombastic, ridiculous James Bond. I want the plot to be bonkers and not take itself quite so seriously as it has done recently. I mean, the thing is, I feel like part of the backlash to the Pierce Brosnan era, it was one of those things where no one likes anything when it's done badly. And those films were done badly. Everyone loved the grounded Daniel Craig era, but they didn't like Quantum of Solace, did they? Because it was shit. So, as much as I get that, I think you could definitely do a return to this style of over-the-top, crazy, bonkers storylines. James Bond style. Even set in the 50s or 60s again. Fuck it. Just go full hog back to the Sean Connery era. Use deep fake AI generated image to recreate Sean Connery. Whatever the fuck. But just go away from the grounded stuff for a while, because this was one of my favourite films ever watching or reviewing for this podcast, and one of my favourite James Bond films straight away. So that's an easy recommendation for You Only Live Twice.
Bon appetit.